We live in a great big world that needs to hear about a great big love. We need to tell the story to every little boy and girl. We gotta go, go, go. Jesus said to go, go, go. We need to tell the story of Jesus and his love. So go, go, go. Go into all the world. Go, go, go. Teach the good news. Go, go, go. Go into all the world. Go, go, go. Teach the good news. We live in a great big world that needs to hear about a great big love. We need to tell the story to every little boy and girl. We gotta go, go, go. Jesus said to go, go, go. We need to tell the story of Jesus and his love. So go, go, go. Go into all the world. Go, go, go. Teach the good news. Go, go, go. Go into all the world. Go, go, go. Teach the good news. Yeah. We live in a great big world that needs to hear about a great big love. We need to tell the story to every little boy and girl. So go, go, go. Go into all the world. Go, go, go. Teach the good news. Go, go, go. Go into all the world. Go, go, go. Teach the good news. Jesus loves them and he loves you. Yeah.
Well, good morning, church family. Today we have the ability to hear from our team that traveled to Nicaragua. So I'm going to invite our Nicaragua team to come on up to us on the stage. You guys can come and take your seats. One of the things that we want to make sure we do as a church is to continue to make sure that we are talking about who Jesus Christ is. In Hebrews chapter 13, verses 15 and 16, it reads this: "Through him, being Jesus Christ, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God. That is the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God." Now, this morning, obviously, it's going to be easy to hear some of the things this team did, but some of you were a part of that. We commissioned them, you prayed over them, you prayed while they were away. Some of you participated even deeper than that. But today we want to hear what this team got to experience, which is, what is Jesus Christ doing in Nicaragua and the places that they visited? So if you would please, let's give a moment to give some attention here. So this is the team that traveled. This isn't everybody, is it? No. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, and then you guys can kind of tell us the rest of the team members who are not participating with us this morning. So let's start on this end. Richard, why don't you make your way around and just introduce yourself? We'll go down the line, and then we'll begin our questioning time.
I'm Richard North.
Let's try that again.
I'm Richard North. I'm Richard North.
There we go. Okay.
I'm Kevin Ariano.
I'm Hannah North.
I'm Sydney Farney.
I'm Ruth Farney.
And I'm Kevin Britton. On the end
And
today
I'm
we have
Jason, and I didn't go.
just Jason. You have a Spanish name, Hassan. So you get to join in. So this morning we're going to ask this team to share with us the things that happened in Nicaragua. So specifically, tell us where you went to.
I'll just give an overview of where we went and what we did. We flew into Managua, Nicaragua, and then wait, can I tell them who else was on our team?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So there were 15 of us that went. Out of the North family, there is Rhonda North also went, and Eric. Brian Farney and Zeke Farney also went. We had Lauren Phelps, who was from this church, but she's already moved to another town. And then we had 4 from Amarillo. We had Kathy Letkeman, Danielle Letkeman, Lola Letkeman, I'm having a hard time saying those names, and then Heather Smith. So those were and Shelly Harris. Sorry, Shelly. Sorry. So those were all of our team members. So we flew into Managua, and from there we traveled 2 hours to Matagalpa, and Matagalpa is in the mountains. And while we were there, we did several things. We worked with Pastor Pablo. He has a new church plant there. It's called Faith Baptist Church in Matagalpa. We did a VBS for 2 days, and then we also worked in a dump ground there with Pastor Kevin. Not this Pastor Kevin, but another Pastor Kevin. And we were able to do a short VBS type event, present the gospel. People responded to that. We were able to feed them there in the dump ground also. Then we traveled back to Managua, where we dedicated the house that we built in memory of Phil Harris. We spent a day with our orphans there, and we also went to the Savior's Tier School. We also went to the neighborhood where we have built homes. Some of you have been with us before, where we've built homes, and we handed out food, beans, rice, and sugar, to 100 families there. So that's the general overview.
So you saw from the video of the pictures that missionary work isn't just going in and doing a singular thing. This team does a dynamic action when they're on the ground. They do a lot of things, including barbarism. Well, maybe Barbary is really the way you say it. So you guys, we're cutting hair. So what was it like to do something like that with? Was it mostly with kids? Was it adults? Who did you do stuff like that with?
I'll go. So mainly the most part where we did hair cutting, which Danielle Lekman, she cuts hair for a living, and so that was really cool for her to get to use the life skill that she has for the Lord. And so mainly when she did that was with the parents, the moms of the kids who came to the VBS, and then a couple of kids there as well.
Okay, so while you guys are cutting hair, is it just hair cutting?
So she's the only one that did cut hair,
okay.
And our translators were being used at the VBS. So yeah, she was just cutting hair because she can't communicate with them whatsoever.
Okay, so there's a language barrier. Did you find that there were people who spoke some English, or was it all having to use translators?
Yes, all translators.
All translators.
Yes.
Okay, which makes it difficult at times. So Hannah, describe to me, what did it take for you guys to get from Perryton, Texas to Managua?
So for us to travel, wasn't much. We just went from Perryton to Dallas. We drove, and then we flew out from Dallas to Managua? Oh, to Miami, and then to Managua we flew. But the bad part was we had to wake up at 3 a.m. in Dallas, and y'all know me, I'm a sleepy girl, so that was rough for me, but we got there safely. But coming home was definitely a trip. We got stuck in Miami coming back from Managua, and sadly they couldn't get us another flight that night, so we had to stay an extra day in Miami, and we got to have a little adventure. And then we flew from Miami to New Orleans to Dallas, and then we drove home. But that was definitely a trip.
Okay. So we hear her perspective. Richard, how do you deal with that kind of travel? I mean, as a parent, as a man, being on a plane filled with a bunch of people, is it difficult, or is it pretty easy to travel there?
It's pretty easy to travel there for me. When I heard that there was a group that might be going, I'm like, yeah. God, you're going to have to tell me not to go to, on a trip like this. I love the people of Nicaragua, and from the first time that I went in 2011, I've just my heart's been drawn towards those people, so it's easy.
Okay. So talk a little bit about the VBS action. How did you guys get connected? Where did you do this? And what are some things that took place? Yeah, use the microphone. It helps.
Okay.
I'm going to tell the connection real quick.
Okay.
So many of you have prayed for one of our interpreters, Erica. Erica has breast cancer. She has battled it for 4 years. It went to her brain. They thought she was going to die, and God has healed her per se. She still does have cancer. She's still on chemo. But her brother has also been an interpreter for us, and her brother is Pablo. And Pablo has been going, he and Erica ran a college in Matagalpa that is called Project 14. Y'all can look it up, and it's an amazing place. And they train locals to be pastors. And so while Pablo was running this facility, starting it from ground up, he felt called to start a church. And he has this church plant, which Pastor Kevin in the dump ground is also another church plant out of Project 14. And so that is our connection of who Pastor Pablo is and how we got connected with him.
Okay.
VBS was actually kind of fun because what we did is there was a group of games, and we also made tie-dye shirts. And but it was really interesting because I honestly didn't expect that many kids to show up. But as the days went by, more and more kept on showing up, and it was just really interesting to see, like, they actually wanted to know God and stuff like that.
Like, how many kids do you think attended the VBS? I mean, rough estimates. You don't have to give exact numbers.
A couple hundred showed
About
up.
200?
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple hundred. Okay. Did you see anything as far as teaching the gospel, working through translators? Do you think some of these kids profess faith in Christ?
Yes, I believe they did. Yes.
Amen. That's powerful. Okay, so VBS happened. And was that in one location, or did you guys do it in just one location? Okay.
A cool thing about the VBS also was that we had memory verses, and if they learned the memory verse, we gave them a wristband, and they were able to go and take that wristband to Pablo's church, that he has a youth thing on Saturdays, and they were able to receive a Bible then.
Ah, very cool.
Which the Bibles were donated from this church also, so thank you.
That's powerful. Okay. So VBS happened. What are some other things you guys did while on the ground in Managua? I mean, we already talked about cutting hair, which is kind of a unique thing, but the VBS, and then what else?
We went to the dump ground in Matagalpa, and as Ruth said, the Project 14 College has planted churches in different places in Nicaragua, and one of the churches they planted was really close to the dump ground there. Pastor Kevin is in charge. He's a young guy with a wife and a child, and they live right there in the middle of all of the nastiness. We were able to pay for their ladies in the church to fix food, and we carried it down to the dump ground, and there wasn't a place for us to serve it there, and so we turned in a little bit before the dump ground. It was, as you might expect the dump ground to be. There were people down there scavenging for plastic and cardboard and things that they can recycle, trying to fight off the vultures down there to feast on the dead animals. It was just a nasty mess, but in all that, God was able to work through us being able to just feed a meal to these people. When we took gobs of food down there, they just started showing up, coming out of the woodwork. And it was a really good experience. We split the people into children and adults, and we were able to share the gospel with both groups before we fed them. And it was just a great opportunity. One time when I was sharing with the adults, it had a little bit of a distraction because it was feeding time for a baby. Right there, a young mother about 5 feet in front of me just decides it's time to feed the baby. And so I'm telling myself, Richard, why don't you concentrate on this side of the crowd, at least until that baby gets latched on good. But I'm telling you, God really worked there among those people. I was so amazed at how attentive they were when we were sharing the gospel with them. And I'm certain that good seeds were planted there.
So you mentioned that people are going into the dump ground. Are there people that live in the dump ground, or are they all kind of going in to get resources and pulling them out?
There, they don't live in the dump ground, but they live all around
it.
Yes.
Yeah, and you've mentioned before the church is right there it's right outside of the dump ground. So how well does Pastor Kevin, does he connect with those people that come in? Is that a pretty effective ministry?
It seems to be really effective, yes. Okay. I just so admire him for raising his family right there in the mess.
Mm. Okay, so Richard, that awkward story moment. So what are some other things that happened on this trip that were kind of humorous or awkward moments like that? I mean, I imagine traveling, getting stuck in Miami could have been difficult, but turned out to be something unique. But what are some other moments on the trip that you guys ever had that were kind of those moments?
So there was this one moment where I was playing soccer with the little kids at the orphanage. And so I go up to kick the ball pretty hard, and I think I kicked it a little too hard and broke a branch off of this one tree that was barely growing. And they go and tell everybody there, like, look what Kevin did, look what Kevin did. And one of the kids comes up to me, he's like, man, you're lucky my Aunt Mari Sock's not here. You touch a leaf on that branch and you're dead. But yeah, I ended up telling her, she said it was fine, so.
The sacred tree. That's difficult, okay. Yeah. Anything else that you guys have were pretty cool experiences like that?
For those of you who have gone on a trip that we have led, I don't always leave people, but I have almost left, well, I have left people. Richard's one of them I've left. And so this year, we had dedicated the house in memory of Phil Harris, and we had about 50 people crammed on our bus. We were taking them all out to eat fried chicken. And so normally when we are leaving, I do a head check, and I call out the North family, the Farney family, and I go down the list and make sure everybody's on our bus. Well, there's 50 of us on there, and I can't see people, and I'm in the very front. And so I had been inside the chicken place, and Brian was standing there, and he asked me, he said, would you go in the bathroom, make sure that everybody's out of the bathroom. So I go in there, and I holler, which there's only 2 stalls, and one of our team members was in there. She said, don't leave me. I said, oh, I won't leave you. And I come back out, and Brian said, was there anybody in there? I said, yeah. And he said, ooh, did it smell bad? And I was like, well, no, it really didn't. Well, he had been in the men's bathroom, and it smelled really bad in there. And if you can imagine kids who have not eaten in days and days and days, and they have fried chicken, it just hurts their tummy. So we got to laughing about that, and we all pile on the bus, and I forget about the one in the bathroom. And we shut the bus. I tell Elvis, Bombalisto, let's go. And here she comes, coming out of there. She was so mad at me. She said, I told you to remember me. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I got on to her a couple days later because she passed some kidney stones while we were there. Oh. And I said, you need to tell us because we need to be praying for you while you're, and she goes, hello, that's what I was doing in the bathroom and you left me. I said, okay, sorry.
Okay, any other stories? Maybe not like that necessarily, but no one's confessing they got left, so I'm assuming we're on stage, we're safe. Okay, so this is a difficult part of this storyline and this trip is that there was a very heavy emotional aspect to this, and I want to dive in just for a moment, so forgive me if we kind of touch on some raw moments, but you've mentioned Phil Harris a couple of times. So for those of us who, like me, didn't know Phil Harris, bring us kind of up to speed on who he is and why he's involved in this trip.
Phil Harris, for anybody that knew him, you remember him being just a fun-loving guy. He loves people, he loved serving, he loved Nicaragua. And so Phil passed away a couple years ago of a massive heart attack, and he had gone with us several times to Nicaragua. The last time he went, we worked with a children's home that is since closed, which is why we have in turn built a home for some of these children. And there was a little girl there that latched onto Phil, and she was probably 2 at the time. She does not remember him, but we have lots of pictures of Phil with this little girl, and her name is Maricela. When Phil passed away, Shelley chose as one of the options to give in memory of Phil be in Nicaragua, and I really struggled with, we can give money in lots of places. There's always a need for money, but I never felt the right thing until I had asked Marisoc, who takes care of all the little kids at the house we've built. I said, is there something you need? And she said, actually, there is a family who needs a home, and lo and behold, it's Maricela's family. And so we started this process a couple years ago. We thought we were going last year, and Nicaragua had too much unrest, and so we didn't go last year. So instead of our team building the home, we actually sent the money and let the locals build it for us. That gives them money as well. And actually, kind of cool story is some of the older children from the previous children's home were able to help build this home. While we were there this year, Shelley came in for part of the trip, and it was a hard day. We knew it would be hard, but we know that Phil's death was not in vain. And so Shelley made it extra hard for us as she went and gave a gift to this family that was something of Phil's that she had hung on to daily since he passed away. And so we know that even though these kids don't remember Phil necessarily, they know that somebody gave in order for them to have something. And the bottom line is, we've told them, we can give you a house, that's fine and good, and we can give you food, but the bottom line is you need Jesus. And so that's the ultimate goal on our trip, is to make sure that they know Jesus. And so
Amen.
That was a hard day, but it was a day that we needed, and thank you for all of you who are part of that, for giving towards the home, for praying for us, for praying for Shelley. It was a sweet, hard day.
Amen. Look, it's one thing to be known and well-liked, to be known as the funny guy, but to leave a legacy that's going to change a family for generations is a great legacy to have that's connected to the gospel. Having a house is one thing, right? But knowing that house is going to be a place, an outpost, a beachhead for the gospel to be shared, because the storyline of Phil's passion for the people of Nicaragua to know about Jesus Christ is a powerful thing. So kudos to your team for making that happen. Shelley, thank you for being a part of that and going down and making that commissioning moment pretty special. I know it was difficult, but I appreciate that. So pretty powerful moment. Let's switch gears again. So tell us about some of the work you guys did at the school. What happened there at Oasis de Esperanza? Sure, Hannah, go ahead.
So at Oasis de Esperanza, this is kind of like my favorite place to go. It's a school in the dump ground area-ish, and we painted their like foyer kind of thing. Auditorium. It's outside, but it's sheltered and covered, and we painted that. We repainted that for them, and then unexpectedly, Brian, I think, comes up, is like, or Ruth, and they're like, hey, who's ready for the devotional? It's like, who's going? And everybody's like, oh, we don't have anything, And so I was like, I guess I'll talk. So I kind of shared my story, and I think Brian went around too to some of the classrooms and kind of shared. But that was a really good experience for me personally. I didn't really know why I was supposed to go on that trip. I didn't really know what I was going to do, but that was kind of like my God moment. It was just like, I've equipped you with your life and your story, and this is when you're going to share it, And so I got to talk to a few classrooms, and then we finished our painting. Some of us ladies and Kevin served lunch. We made some really good, like, cinnamon arroz con leche. And it was really good, but that's about all we did at the school.
Okay, so I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper, because there are some people who don't know who you are. So you keep referring to your story and God's work with you. So what was it that you were able to share that was something that those kids needed to hear? What was it?
So,
I know. You got to be brief.
so if y'all don't know, I'm adopted, and I feel like that's kind of one of my specialties that the Lord has given me. And so, yeah, I've shared that with not a lot of people, but this past year I had the opportunity to share that at Field of Faith in Canadian, and then I had a little girls' night, and now in Nicaragua. So kind of just reaching out through that aspect in my life.
Look, it's an amazing story to take something that's happened to you and talk about it, but to then tie that back to how God works and what he does for people. Yes. For people who don't have hope like that, it's a very powerful story. So yeah, I'm glad you got a chance to share that. On a spur of the moment, impromptu, not prepared, but you shared that story a couple of times. And if you know Hannah, she really has a difficulty talking in front of people. She doesn't take those opportunities very often. And that's all sarcasm. She loves to talk. She's gotten really good at it. Okay, so special moment there. We talked about the moment with the Harris house, Phil Harris house. What are some other moments individually that were kind of these aha God moments on the trip? So Sydney, you can take us from there.
So one of our days we went and fed our barrio, which is our neighborhood that we have built homes for in the past. And so that is a really physically demeaning, or it takes, we were sweating and dripping and soaking wet. It was so hot, and we're carrying around beans and rice and sugar and just going and going and going. And in the midst of that, two things happened back to back where the whole group is turning around the corner, going to the next street, and I'm at the end, and a lady comes and pulls me and Kathy Leckman and Heather aside and was like, hey, this note in this bag means way more than, I will. This note in this bag means more than the food. And inside of the bags that we gave, we had a letter that was handwritten, and then the Romans Road, and basically just telling them the love of Jesus and that there's hope in him. And so that is something huge to say, because in Nicaragua right now there's just not a lot of food, and the people there, especially in that area, are really hungry. And so we were able to encourage her and let her know that we see her and that the Lord sees her. And that was really special that I just got to witness. And then right after that, a young man, probably, I don't know, about my age, he came up and was like, hey, I remember you from the medical clinic a few years ago, whenever that was, I don't remember. But a couple years ago, we did a medical clinic in this same area, and this kid comes up and was just like, hey, I remember you. And in that moment, it was just the Lord calling me to be bold in that time. And so I was able to, blatantly up front, not avoid anything, and just say, hey, do you know the Lord? And he said yes, and I was able to speak into him without avoiding stuff, important things like you need to follow the Lord. I know it's so hard not to follow the Lord. There's drugs, and there's sleeping around, and there's doing all the things that are so easy in our life to get distracted from the Lord as a young person. And so that was a time. I'm not super upfront like that. Usually, I've got to know you pretty well to be bold in your face like that. And that was just a time where the Lord encouraged me to be bold and speak some life into this kid.
So in the terms of spiritual awareness, we often think in terms of really big moments where there's this, whether it's speaking in tongues or whether there's a healing. But in scriptural terms, when we talk about spiritual awareness and spiritual manifestation, that's what Scripture talks about. That in a moment that you may not have a speech prepared, but the Spirit speaks through you, highlights the gospel, elevates Christ, and somebody has the opportunity to believe. That's happening because the Spirit knows that He's working on people's hearts around you. So that was an incredible moment, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. Anybody else have any kind of those aha moments, the special moments that you had while on the trip?
There was this one moment where we went to that house that Phil had built, and we were fixing to leave, and one of the kids is like, hey, come here, and he whispers in my ear, like, I like your hat. And I was like, oh, you want one? Like, we have more in the bus. And he's like, no, I want your hat. And at first I was like, oh, wow. And I told Eric about it. And he goes like, well, give it to him, I mean, you can get one whenever you want, and they can't. And at that moment, I kind of realized, like, wow, like, God really does have us blessed here in the United States, We're able to get, like, brand mark shoes, hats, whatever we want, but, like, for them, like, they can't get that kind of stuff that we have,
Cool. Way to be open to give away. Did you have the salt lines on it from working in it previous days?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I told him, I was like, it's kind of gross. Do you still want it? He's like, it's okay. I want it. Like, okay.
It's your signature. Any other moments like that?
One thing that was really encouraging to me was every night we had devotionals, and those were really encouraging. And one night, Erica shared her story. And it was so incredible how God has worked through her cancer and just shown out remarkably in her life.
Amen.
And it was so encouraging to us all.
That's powerful. Oh, wow. Okay. Anything else?
That was my story. For those of you who have followed Erica's journey, even though I knew it personally, I hadn't really heard her speak it, and so she has an amazing testimony. And I remember shortly after she was right before she was diagnosed with cancer, she had told me, she said, all I want to do in life is tell others about Jesus. And so when she was diagnosed with cancer, we were all like, really, God? Like, why did you let this happen? And God has used her story in so many ways. And so we are thankful for Erica. We're thankful for all the people that she has put us in contact with and how she protects us on these trips. But more importantly, she just loves Jesus, and she freely, openly shares that with everybody that she comes in contact with.
Very cool. The next question I'm going to ask is some of the contact people on the ground. Erica, obviously, we've heard her story a couple of times. So I'm going to ask you who some of those people are. But before we get there, we want you to know this is now a time, if you're engaging on Facebook, if you're online, if you have some questions you would like for us to ask, this is a chance for you to engage, and you can submit those questions through our Facebook Live app. And Jason will be taking those questions as they come in and interrupting me to ask those questions, because he's been the silent person in the end, just kind of giggling from time to time. So along with Erica, who were some of the other people who were kind of those people of peace on the ground to help you guys do what you were trying to do?
Our bus driver, Elvis, we've met him on our past trips. He drives our bus every time, but this time he kind of connected with us a little more. I felt like, maybe it was just me, but it's just amazing to see the people that are working and doing their job, getting to work and use their job for the Lord, and get to go with us and do all the things that we get to do. So Elvis is kind of our go-to man.
Is Elvis a common name in Nicaragua? Okay, all right. Anybody else besides Elvis and Erica?
And Mari Sock, she takes care of our kiddos, and she's the one who recommended the family to build a house for. She is a great set of eyes and ears for the Lord over there. She wants to lead people to Jesus and do whatever it takes to do that, and so she has been a good a guide for us in the area where she's at.
What does Marisak do there? I mean, what is our connection to her?
She literally just takes care of our kids.
Okay.
Yeah. So she's the house mom at our kids. The Tia, they call her Tia Marisak. So, yeah.
Okay. When we say our kids, what do we mean by that?
So several years ago, the children's home that we had worked with in the past closed down, and those kids all got basically thrown back out on the streets with nowhere to go. Most of them have family members, but those family members obviously either couldn't take care of them or they were being abused. And so as soon as it happened, Marisak contacted me, and we said, whatever it takes, if you're willing, we'll walk alongside you to help take care of these kids. And so it's been a process. We've built a home, and it's not an orphanage, it's just a house. Has a couple of rooms and an outdoor kitchen and a bathroom outside. And so kids that she comes in contact with from the previous children's home, they live with her. And we have ranged from 4 kids at the home to up to 8. Some come and go. Some of them live in an area that gets muddy during the rainy season, so they live with her during the rainy season so they can get to school on time. But Marisak used to work at the previous children's home, and so that's how we knew her, and that's how she knows the children. So she not only takes care of those kids, she also makes sure the other kids that aren't living with her are being fed and taken care of. And when she sees something that's not right or needs some food, she messages me, and then we get that taken care of.
And you guys have been big champions on this side to help them with resources to make sure that house runs.
Right. So Wayne from Savior's Tier, he also helps them financially. We do all the special projects. So if they need school uniforms, or when they needed the bathroom, we do the bathroom, or the porch, or whatever special things that come up. Then that's what we have done, is take care of the special projects.
Oh, okay. All right, perfect. So we got Erica, we got Marisak, Elvis. Anybody else who is on the ground there who are our contacts?
Pastor Pablo is somebody that we're in contact with all the time as well, which that's who we worked with in Matagalpa, and he put us in contact with Pastor Kevin. Him and Pastor Kevin worked together on a lot of things, especially in the dump ground area, and which Pablo's not very far from there, but he doesn't actually live in that dump ground area. So those are our main ones. Wayne also is who runs Savior's Tier at the school, and so he's also another contact. And then we have the families in the barrio, which really we use Erica to contact all of those for us. Okay.
Anybody else that we're missing? I mean, it may not have been a big contact person, but may have been somebody who was kind of influential in getting into, whether it was the food or whatever. Anybody else we're missing?
Really, at Project 14, there's a guy named Richard Ramos, and I can see us working with him possibly in the future. He is such a good motivator, and he's just a go-getter, and he runs the college now.
Okay.
And the college is such a great idea to train locals to plant churches there. That's just a super thing that they're doing there.
Look, I want you guys to know on behalf of the church, your work to not simply go in and be the spectacle and leave, and you leave awake, but to go in and empower and encourage people who live there to be Christ in the moment, Christ in the neighborhood, Christ in the dump ground. That's a powerful thing. And so on behalf of the church, thank you for that work, to continue to do that. Jason?
Well, and I want to chime in just on behalf of the church, for you guys to understand and know that you're a part of this team, whether you're on the ground there or whether you're sitting in the chair here, because every time that you give to the church, a portion of that goes into our missions, and that is how we help support these guys to go, along with all the, you didn't do a car wash, but some fundraiser lunches, and maybe you should do a car wash. But there's a lot of opportunities through the year that you have for different mission teams, not just this one, and not just mission teams, whether it's projects we work with Zambia or whatever that you guys are a part of, whether you're sitting in those chairs or whether you're up here on the stage. But I do have a couple questions, several actually, but these two kind of go together. They are asking, what is the climate there, and where do you sleep when you're there?
Doesn't sound like you sleep much.
Was it better than the Miami airport? That's the question.
Anything is better than the Miami airport. So the climate is hot and humid, and hotter and humider as the days went on. I think painting at the school for me was the hottest day ever. I was literally dripping. So that day it was 101, 104, felt like 116.
Oh.
It was great. Yeah, no wind. And then, so there are, when we're in the city, we stay in a Best Western, right? Holiday Inn. They're all the same. And then in Matagalpa, we stayed in like bed and breakfast. It was nice. We had beds and an AC, so
yeah,
it was nice. We were taken care of. Yeah.
So how does the Holiday Inn compare to the Holiday Inn here?
Actually, when we got stuck in Miami for 2 days, we stayed at a Holiday Inn. We stayed in the airport the first night. We stayed in a Holiday Inn the second night. And the Holiday Inn in Managua is much nicer. And really, we have, just so you don't think we're going and staying in style, we have priced local hotels that are safe in Managua, and they are more expensive than Holiday Inn. So we choose Holiday Inn.
Yeah, it's for just on a personal story. When we were adopting our son, we stayed at a Marriott in Guatemala, and it was like a diamond resort here. I mean, it was crazy, and it was probably $50, $60 cheaper a night than what we spend here. So, another question is who travels with the team? Who may travel with the team? Is it open to everybody? Do you handpick from a certain group of people? Do you have to be a part of a certain? I mean, obviously, people from Amarillo went. So
This year, last year we were scheduled to go, and we had 30 people going, and and it was open to whoever wanted to go. We already had some of those funds in place to go for this year, and we just opened it up to our team from last year. Basically, I was unsure as a leader to go into the country after unrest. I wanted a smaller team. I wanted to be able to be on one bus, and I really was fine if it was just two of us going. I felt like God knew who was supposed to be on that team, and I just wanted to make sure it was safe. And actually, this trip, those of us who have been before, we talked about it, we felt safer this year than we've felt on any year, and I'm not sure why, but thank God for that. But it's typically open to whoever. This year we just opened it back up to those who had signed up to go last year.
So one of the things that I want you guys to understand as a church is that our mission teams are dynamic. Sometimes, like Ruth says, it's open. We want people to know the trip is available. We want you to go. Sometimes we make it open to everybody, but we select based on the action. We want the action of the mission trip to determine the size of the team and not the size of the team to dictate what we can do. But we want to make sure that those trips are done purposefully. So sometimes you'll hear of a trip that may have a handful of people, and you wonder, well, how come everybody didn't know? It's because there was a specific action. We want you to know about the trip, but it may not have been open to everybody. Other times, it's wide open. You get a chance to register, come listen to meetings, come make a decision, but it's not one way or the other. It's what's available and what the action is. So we just want to make sure that's understood from a missions team perspective.
And I'll add to that if you're interested in going, not necessarily to Nicaragua, not necessarily Guatemala, if you're interested in going on missions somewhere and you don't know how to do that or where to start, contact me. If you don't know Ruth, if you know Ruth, call her. If you're interested in Nicaragua, she'll definitely tell you the ins and outs of that. But feel free to stop by my office or give me a call. And you may just have a heart to go and not know where the best fit is. We'll help you along that path to figure that out. Another question is, what does it take to go? I'm assuming they mean
that's
financially.
money. Pretty much average, it's $2,000. In the $2,000, we typically spend more than $2,000 per person. However, God always provides, and so $2,000 on average will pay for everything from the time you leave Perryton till the time you return to Perryton, including your food, insurance. Whatever we do there, all of our activities while we're there. But that's, in general, $2,000.
And so does that include, like, when you do the VBS, being able to get, cool.
Any supplies.
So there you go. Another question is about the kids from the orphanage. So I'm assuming this will be from the orphanage that closed, more or less, because the question is, do you have a way, or have you been able to keep track of any of those kids that have aged out of that system, and are they doing good, or do you know?
Sure. Marisot keeps up with almost every single child that was at the previous children's home. There were between 35 and 40 when the home actually closed. So she keeps up with, I can ask her pretty much at any given time how somebody's doing, and she will have talked to them. We were really excited. So those of you who have been before, you will probably have remembered David. David has one eye that kind of goes to the side, if that rings a bell with you. David, when the children's home closed, he had half a year left of school. And so half a year. So he was able to go to Wayne School and finish out that school year. And then he left, and he is at Project 14, and he is the poster child.
Cool.
So he is being trained to be a pastor. He helped us with VBS every day. He was hands down pure joy to us on this team. He helped with every part that he could be allowed to be with us. But he has come out of his shell. God has used him in mighty ways, and so we're really excited for him. while we were in Matagalpa, we also were able to connect with a couple of other kids. One of them was, I think Dennis connected with Lester our very first year. That year, I very clearly remember we gave out Beanie Babies, and I had made blankets. And the blanket that Lester got, I got chills thinking about this, but the blanket that Lester got had turtles on it. The Beanie Baby he randomly got had a turtle on, or was a turtle, and Dennis connected, turtle. And we were able to find Lester. I have not seen Lester in years, and he lives in Matagalpa. His brother, if any of you have been before, had a really bad leg, Jamil. So Lester and Jamil joined us for VBS. I don't know that they're in a great place, but they were able to hear the gospel 2 nights in a row. We were able to feed them, and they are both in school. So those were 2 other kids we were able to see. But Marisoc keeps in touch with pretty much every single child that used to be at the children's home. Some of those she goes out and she does feed, make sure that they are in school. And some of those she's called and said, hey, would you be willing to help pay to get them in school? And we have done that. So yes, there is contact, not with me personally, but Marisoc.
So we're going to ask one more question from our online query, and then I'm going to ask each of you what is the one thing from your perspective that we as a congregation need to continue praying for? So think about that. But Jason, ask our last question.
Well, I have kind of 2, because we do have one person that's ready to
a
sign
rule
up.
breaker.
Yeah. Well, I have one person that's ready to sign up for the winter team. They don't want to go during the summer. If we go in the winter, but I've got bad news for you. The climate doesn't change much down there. That's why we go to Guatemala. It's like 70 where we go year round, and they're just a little bit farther south, and they get the heat and the humidity. That's it, and it stays that way year round. Okay, last question is about the churches down there, and that is, what do they meet when you have a church in Nicaragua, or especially at the dump ground area is kind of where my mind's going. Do they meet on a weekly, regular basis? Is it once a week? Is it kind of throughout the week as people come and go? Do you know how they work for their church?
I'll tell you, I don't know exactly for Pastor Kevin, although I think it's the same as Pastor Pablo. They meet just like we do. They have their a weekly Bible club on Saturdays, and I will say that since we were there, he's had 30 new kids coming. So that's been a huge, huge deal for him. Then they meet on Sunday, and they have Sunday school, and then they have church. Their prayer for both, I know, Pastor Kevin and Pastor Pablo is that they have enough room to, Kevin can actually build onto his church. Pablo cannot. He's on a city street. But they both of those pastors live in their church. So it's a one room. There's one room, and that's the sanctuary. There's a bathroom, a little bitty kitchen, and a bedroom. And so for Pastor Pablo, he's not married. He lives in that extra bedroom. Pastor Kevin has a wife and 2 kids. They live in their extra bedroom. So they both would like to be able to have enough room to have a Sunday school room so that the kids can meet separately, but right now they can't. But they do have normal Sunday services, Sunday school and Sunday, and then children's Bible club during the week.
It might be worth us exploring the opportunity instead of fog machines to somehow pump in the dump smell just so we can worship with them one Sunday and appreciate what it means to really be hungry for the gospel. We might clear this building out pretty quick if we did that, but when you're hungry for the gospel, very few things will get in your way, and that's something that's good. Okay, so we're going to work our way from Richard back towards Ruth. What is it that you want us to remember to pray about as we walk away from today's testimony?
I'd really like for you to pray for the people that are there, that are on the ground, that are doing the work day in, day out. There's a kid from Ulysses, Kansas, Nate Dalkey. He's there. He teaches at the school. He seemed a little bit discouraged when we talked to him. So lift those people up in prayer. They're there doing God's work, and Satan works on people that are doing God's work, and they're doing such an amazing work. Just lift them up in prayer.
Okay.
I would say just pray for peace and assurance there, because for them, they may not know when their next meal is, and that could be stressful. And money, they're not as wealthy as we are. So I just pray for that.
Okay.
I can go along with both of them, but personally, I don't know if any of y'all bought socks from me, but that was a great blessing for me financially for my trip, but unfortunately the socks didn't come in for me to take, so when someone would buy a pair of socks, I would receive one to go hand out there, and they didn't make it in the mail in time, so we still have those socks on hand, but just pray that we can find and know where those socks are supposed to go, because we know that they're supposed to go somewhere.
Yeah, we can make sure to help with that one. Sydney?
I would say praying for our kids at the children's home and for Marisaka. She's leading and molding these kids to know the Lord, and that is, I'm not a parent, but I know that parenting kids is a big undertaking, and she's got several of them at a time, and they're not her kids, but she's loving them like they're hers, and I know that's a big undertaking that can be just overwhelming at times. So
Very cool. That's a good prayer.
Just pray that the seeds that were planted during that week, this was a really big evangelical trip for us. Everywhere we went, we shared the gospel, and
Amen.
we know we left those people in good hands. We know Pastor Pablo is following up. We know Erica is following up. Pastor Kevin is following up. But just as Richard said, Satan is busy, and he is discouraging. And I've heard from both of those pastors since we've been back, and even though good things are happening, I know things are hard. And so when you think of Nicaragua, just pray that the seeds that were planted will be watered, that will be fed, and that it fell on good soil.
Amen. Those are great prayers. I'm going to ask Ruth if you'll make sure that work with Jason this week, and let's get a list of those names, make sure we post it on Facebook. And if you're not connected with us, connect on Facebook. We'll post those names that kind of guide your prayers a little bit. And as we continue to pray for all these things, the gospel be shared, people who are sharing it be empowered. You know, one of the things we forget about is, as a pastor, there's this dream for great things to happen spiritually. And one of the great distractions to that will be things, right? I wish I had a different church in a different location, but that's the church that God has commissioned, and that's the location He has called it to be. But sometimes as a pastor, you have a heart for something that you think is better. So we want to pray those pastors are encouraged that they simply live obedient. And if God wants to move that church someplace else, He will make it known. But if He wants to keep that church at that beachhead, that it would stay, and those pastors would have their needs met because of their faith in Jesus Christ. There's a lot of things to pray for. I think as a congregation, we want to make sure we express to this team and those who aren't up here, who are also in our congregation, and those who maybe not be joining us today, who are in other places, who went on this trip, that we are grateful that they were our ambassadors representing us, but they were ambassadors of Christ going around in the areas of Nicaragua sharing a life-changing gospel. So guys, thank you very much.